Hello, my name is Jason Weeks and I work for an organisation called CEFAS, which is the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Agriculture Science. And we have a role within the CEET project looking at the policy advice and really understanding how our fellow partners and governments in each of the respective Asian countries, how much knowledge they have about the EU, about the EU directives, about the controls on export and import of materials from those respective regions. And so just testing their knowledge initially, understanding and judging how much they understood and where the limitations may or may not have been, and then testing that knowledge going forward during the lifetime of the project. So we're now obviously at year 4 coming to an end. How much have they learnt, how much have we been able to influence and shape and form and change the views of those respective governments. And of course finally there's the stage of going back and feeding back policy changes, recommendations from the overall work of all the projects, of all the CEET project work groups, distilling all that information together so that we can make some sort of consensus approach with some policy advice and policy recommendations about perhaps how each country might in the future might want to change some of the activities that they're doing to come more in line with the ease of entering into the European markets and other markets, to meet less, shall we say, confrontation in terms of barriers, trade barriers or prevention, rejection systems for products, and really looking at how we can shape, influence and inform that advice. Tied into that at the same time, certainly part of the work of the overall consortium has been really focusing on the EAFI, this Ethical Aquatic Food Index, and what that means in terms of it's not a certification scheme, it's not a scheme in the same sense of that. It's very much focused on the ethics and sustainability issues of each of the member countries with each of their exports, and looking to circumvent barriers again to export into the EU, but building on an ethical sustainability focus. So it's a framework, it's a risk-based framework that goes through various iterative tiers. Each of those tiers, there's the opportunity to exit from those tiers provided you have sufficient information about the quality of your product. And the idea is that you're influencing and shaping and making changes to the way that prawns or shrimp or fish are farmed in those countries, and taking the best knowledge from all of the partners together to be more informed about, and again feeding into the policy changes and recommendations about how to get your product to market, how to sell your product to the best marketplace in the European census, building together all those ethical and sustainability issues all into one single forum, and ultimately having an index at the end of that, a score that will tell you how well your product fits into that overall scheme.
That's perfect.
Is that sufficient?
I mean, the only thing I'd ask is if you could explain sort of to go over again why the relevance to the EU, if that makes sense.
So the overall work that the policy part of the project has been focusing on is understanding more about preventing, for example, currently there are multiple rejections of products that are coming in from the Asian countries. Some of those are rejected on the basis of not meeting criteria that are imposed by the European directives and the European nations. And so some of those would be bacterial loading or chemical residues or antimicrobial concentrations of compounds in those materials coming into the EU as imports. And the role is to really make sure that the governments understand why these rejections are occurring, and what they can do about them. And that's about more control, perhaps more governance in country. It's about having a registry perhaps of some of those compounds, banning some of those compounds and taking action. And certainly during the lifetime of the project we've seen less and less rejections of Asian product coming in. I'm not saying that's necessarily all a consequence of CEET, but there's certainly there's a growing awareness and understanding of how to get product into the EU to maintain that level of continuous product input and export, and to produce a better quality product overall. And that's the key driver. It's really about, from my perspective, it's really about ensuring that there's this continuous supply of product into the EU, because we're very dependent on it. And we like to eat shrimp and prawns, and it's maintaining that link in. Okay.